I got one. Oh, yeah. Right there on, Lacey.
Yeah.
First responders. Check out this place. Probably April. It's called the Beer Marathon. Beer Marathon. Yeah, it's all Washington beers. You don't run it. You ever drink one run? No, we just drink beer. You have a week and a half, 2 weeks tops. You're drinking all Washington beer if you finish within a certain time. Schooners Town, Old Banks Town. They call Banks.
How do you get the picture?
30-something.
Bartending night?
No. Spread out for 2 weeks. Yeah, you take this, you gotta. Well, I think one guy did it in the 1.5 days. I can't do that.
That's dedication.
I got it in 3 days.
Indian creation.
2 days. Because there's only 10 taps. And so you have to, because it's all just the tap stuff, it's not the glass or the bottles and anything like that. So you have to go through and drink it all. And then, like I said, Schooners count those kind of, people have to. And then when it comes on, lunch.
What town are you
I live here in Tucson.
Okay.
When I go up there, it's in University.
Yeah, it's a nice area.
Where used to work. This is bar, and that's great beer selection. This was actually pretty nice. It's like 3 levels, a ladder, about a ladder with a bunch of taps. I forget the count, but
Did it have with all of them? Did they have a wall in front? Because everybody's just like that. National.
All right. This is the Death by PowerPoint edition of finance. The next 3 classes, I know we're running a little late. Let's start out here and circulate. Next 3 classes we've got, I'm going to try and get us caught up. Now, I want to stress a couple things. As we go through the next sets of classes, we're going to be talking quite a bit about project finance, net present value, how to make a determination as to whether to do a project or not do a project. That's the pretty critical piece to this. So that's the one kind of really useful decision-making skill that you'll have when you leave here outside some of the stuff we've already talked about. There's a number of other things here that are math heavy. You'll probably never see those again, except for on the homework or on the weekly assignment. So I'll let you know with my special ways what the critical pieces are, but in general, from here on forward, when you start seeing heavy-duty math, you're not likely to see it again beyond the test assignment or a homework, a weekly assignment. The final is not going to be heavy math. You're going to have a couple problems, but it's going to be a lot more trying to explain why, give you some analysis. So a couple of weeks ago, or a couple classes ago, folks were like, okay, I want to know what, there's about half, 3/4 of classes in money banking next semester or next session. So you wanted to know what book we were going to be using. So we're using this Money Banking and Financial Markets by Lawrence Ball. It is, do I have an ISBN number? Yeah. Yeah. Let me give you one. So the 13-digit ISBN number is 978-1-4292-4409-1. Again, 978-1-4292-4409-1. This has been used several semesters. You should be able to find them used. I recommend you find them used. This book is fascinating if you're really dull. So I picked this book largely because it's been used for like the last 5 or 6 sessions of money banking, so that there should be plenty of used copies, because I don't think anyone keeps this as like a permanent member of the library. There's also, so if you can find a used copy, get one. I haven't looked at, this is the second edition, I haven't looked at the first edition, but my gut tells me, if you can find a first edition, it's probably okay. So I don't have a copy of the first edition. They send, when you pick the textbook, they send the professor a copy of a desk copy of the textbook, so I don't have the older edition. But I'm here to tell you, the stuff that we're going to cover hasn't changed dramatically from 3 years ago when the last edition was done.
Is there any kind of online assignment?
There is not going to be any online assignments. I know that that's tragically going to break your hearts. The other thing is there's this study guide. Don't buy it. So sometimes when you go get the new stuff, or you go to the bookstore or whatever, you'll see that they order up all these study guides too. Don't buy it. If there's going to be assignments that are kind of study guide oriented, like word problem type oriented for some periodic assignments, they'll be modified by me and given to you guys. This is like 20-something bucks. It's not worth buying. When we talk about money in banking, I'll give you one little preview. Thank you. I'll give you a little preview on money in banking before we dig into definite PowerPoint. And so the preview on money in banking, for those of you who have suffered through the business program here at St. Martin's for years, is starting, I believe, after next year, it is no longer going to be required for graduation. Because my understanding is that it was only required for graduation because there was no macro course back in the day. So this became the macroeconomics course. Then they put a macro course in, but they didn't take the money in banking out because, you know, I've got my theories, and it's mostly around full employment of finance professors. So we left money in banking in as a core business course, and I think if you recall a few weeks ago, I was like, I had to take this as a finance major. I don't know why we have it as a core course here. Well, we are changing that. It's okay. Sorry. That's okay. Maybe some of them. So I don't know why we have it as a core course here. Well, in another year and a half, we won't. But you guys are all on track to collaborate and graduate. So the one thing I'm going to tell you right now is as we go into money and banking and you look at this book, and like I said, I chose this book because we've used it historically here for several semesters, so there should be plenty of used copies. Don't be overwhelmed by, there's a lot of calculations in here, and it talks about, you know, kind of how to calculate real interest rates and how to calculate some of that kind of stuff. We're going to focus predominantly on policy analysis, economic policy analysis, and how money and banking impacts us in the real world. I'm not going to have you do a bunch of formulas around how to calculate this, that, and the other thing. Just because, one, it's never going to be useful. I don't have any finance majors in the course. That's number one. And number two, I think, is I've gone through it and started preparing the syllabus for next session, and I started digging into it. I met with one of the other finance professors today. Our philosophy is very much to focus this on how do we make you kind of more aware as business leaders around the impacts of what macroeconomic and monetary policy might do to your business, rather than have you calculating a bunch of esoteric things that really aren't ever going to be used again. So the couple of us that are teaching it this next semester are shifting the emphasis away from quantitative analysis to qualitative and policy analysis, which should make it a little bit more useful for you guys post-graduation. So when you get this book, and you kind of dig into it, because there's going to be a couple papers and one exam, I think, is how I've got it set up right now, and a couple homework assignments that are going to be light. Don't get worried about math. The math in here is like, some of it is calculus based, some of it's a little bit whack. Don't worry about the math. We're going to focus more on policy. So that's your preview for money and banking. Like I said, you guys had asked. So this is the book. Money, Banking, and Financial Markets by Lawrence Ball. Like I said, the second edition is what we're using. If you find the first edition, it's probably going to be sufficient and save yourself some money. Get out there now. You can get used copies probably on Amazon and or at the bookstore or what have you. Any questions on some of those items before I kind of dive into midterm stuff. Okay, so I've got midterms coming in. A number of folks had said that they had no problems whatsoever online. Grades right now have ranged from about 76 on the low side up to several 100s. So you guys seem to have a pretty good feel for the material. I've got a couple folks that, as of noon today, when I had to turn in midterm grades, hadn't gotten the midterms in yet. So if you get midterm grades, they're based upon the grades I had, and that's what went up to the registrar. So nobody's in academic trouble in this class. But I don't know if they report out to you guys your midterm grades, do they? Like you get an official report on midterm grades? Okay. So if I get a few moments, I think I can put them up on Moodle so you can see kind of where you're at, and I'll do that. But everybody's doing fairly well, with some folks like blowing it out of the water well. So keep up the good work. Like I said, we're really on the home stretch now. The next 3 classes are going to be, I'm going to try and power through a bunch of material so that we're set up for really the tail end of the course, which is some of the application around project finance and decisioning. Having said that, we've got a number of, once I get done grading all the finals and I look at a little heuristic of kind of whether there was a pattern of problems. Once I get through the next couple classes, hopefully we'll be well caught up, and I'll slow down before the final and go, okay, we've got a final review day that Monday before the last day of class. And between now and then, we'll go through stuff that seems to be a challenge on the final or on the midterm so that folks are ready. You won't see a lot of that same stuff on the final. As I mentioned, the final's not going to be super math heavy. Having said that, I want to make sure you understand and have a chance to ask questions. But I do want to blast through the next couple classes. So it's going to be a lot of droning on. It's going to be death by PowerPoint. I'm going to be trying to move through essentially 4 chapters in 3 days. And these are pretty critical. I pulled some material out. Like I said, we're going to skim through some of the math stuff. I'll expect you to kind of understand what the theory is, but you're not going to get a lot of calculation. Any questions before I dive into tonight? Okay. So we're going to start off with risk. What is risk? So we talked about this early. So who wants to define for me? Well, it kind of says it up here. But who wants to define for me, based upon some of the discussion we had earlier in the course, what risk is? In your own words, as opposed to the chance that I'm not expecting the outcome won't occur. Come on, it's going to be a long day if I just throw.
That was pretty much what we said to begin with.
Maybe like if you do something with a chance of failing.
It's the probability that something doesn't happen or something happens which you're not expecting to happen.
Yeah, there's an expectation, and an expectation is your if you look at a normal distribution as your mean. So you go, okay, the average is this. Risk is anything that's not the average. It's any deviation. So risk includes upside as well as downside. Normally, when we talk about risk, we think about it as, oh my God, it's the chance of a loss, chance of a bad thing happening. Technically, risk is measured by standard deviation, and it's the risk of any unexpected outcome, positive or negative. So again, sometimes you're going to hear risk, and it's going to look like it's all upside. You're going to go, well, there's no risk there. I've got like 3 potential choices, and they're all good. The risk is that anything is going to be different from what is predicted. So you're going to have essentially an R as an expected rate of return, and then you have an R star, which might be the actual rate of return. The 2 might be different, and any difference up or down is going to be risk. And so a probability distribution, which we'll talk about very briefly, is really going, okay, here's all the possibilities for an investment. I'll use an investment in this case, and what the likelihood of each is. So you could say, okay, I got a 20% probability that this stock goes to 0, a 30% probability that it goes up by 10%, a 20% probability that it goes up by 20%, and a 30% probability that it goes up by 50%. That's a probability distribution. It's basically taking each potential outcome, assigning a probability to it, and the sum total of those probabilities will equal 100. So that is really taking potential outcome, and any deviation from those is risk. So here's a probability outcome that's binary. It's either going to rain or it's not. So in this case, we say, okay, there's a 40% chance of rain and a 60% chance of no rain. So you've got a 40%, 60%, 100%. This is just a simple probability distribution. Any questions on what a probability distribution is? The key to remember is if you're asked to put one of these together, that your sum total has to equal 100. At the end of the day, something is going to happen. Even if the choice is no rain, nothing happens, there's still going to be a probability attached. The sum total is always has to equal 100. 100% or 1. So here's a couple examples of how you might use this in real life. So you go, okay, we've got the probability of an economic event. So a boom, 20% chance, normal 50% chance, recession 30% chance. Note that sum total equals to 1. So we're going to go, hey, something's going to happen. The economy's going to do something. It's either going to be normal, it's going to crash, or it's going to boom. Here's the percentages assigned to it. Generally, in this class, you're going to get assigned those percentages. In a lot of cases, if you're doing this analysis for yourself, you're going to have to come up with those percentages. That's some of the work that you'll be doing, going, okay, I think there's a 50% chance that this is going to happen. Then we say, okay, we've analyzed potentially based upon historical information or based upon modeling. We've said, okay, this is what's going to happen with these companies if these economic situations occur. This is what's going to happen to the company. So if you look at this, which company do you think is riskiest? Why?
It's just so the same amount of risk for each, the change, or not the risk, the probability to change is so
Greater change.
It's a greater change, right? So when you think about risk as being measured by standard deviation, this has a much larger deviation of performance than this one does. So when you look at these two, the average might be the same, but the standard deviation on Martin products is significantly higher than that on US Electric. And so that's one of the ways you can look at very quickly, go, okay, which one's riskier? And you think about it as the probability that something's occurring other than your average, and you go, oh my gosh, I've got a very wide distribution, wide standard deviation, or very tight distribution, tight standard deviation. That's going to give you just an instinctive level of risk. So you might see a question that goes, here's a probability distribution, which one's riskier? You can go through a massive exercise to try to calculate the standard deviation, or you can probably cut it out in most cases and kind of get a good feel for which is riskier. So expected rate of return is really the R. That's what you're expecting the outcome to be. So it's the rate of return expected to be realized from investment during its life. It's the mean value of that probability. It's the weighted average of the outcomes, where the weights are the probability. So again, it's basically all these things are the same. And it's just different ways that they might be presented to you to calculate. But at the end of the day, the expected rate of return is really the expected outcome. Any questions on, that's definition. That's just a straight up definition. Any questions on that definition? So you can go through this exercise of calculating expected rate of return, where you start, again, we talk about sigma notation, and you just iterate your way through the number of periods until you're able to get the probability times the rate of return, probability times the rate of return, probability times the rate of return. You're basically calculating out that expected return on a probability distribution. That's what this is showing here. Like I said, you can go through the exercise of calculating standard deviation. You can also calculate standard deviation using Excel. There's a standard deviation formula in Excel. So you highlight here's all my potential outcomes. You highlight it, the standard deviation formula, and it'll calculate this for you. You will not be asked to calculate standard deviation on the final exam. You did it in business statistics, you don't need to do it here. So, but you might get asked, given kind of a couple probability distributions, which one's riskier? And if you need to calculate by standard deviation, you can do that using Excel, but it's probably going to be a little bit more obvious. So here's Martin Products. You saw that, okay, the expected return our had is 15%. This is what happens in each of those scenarios. So now we're going, okay, kind of carry the standard deviation calculation across. And this is each of the probabilities. This is the expected. This is the regular deviation. This is squaring it. Remember, when you're looking at standard deviation from a statistics perspective, it's a sum of the squares. Sum squared error, SSE. So here's the squares. Here's the probabilities. This just multiplies it through by the probabilities to give you the total variance. So variance is sigma squared. To get standard deviation, you take the square root. So the square root of 3,517 is 59.3%. And again, that's a point measure. As noted, you can probably do this analysis, but we came to what we're going to find is we came to the right answer without having to do all the counts. So this has got a 59.3% standard deviation. If we look at, oh, I must have pulled it out. If we look at the same thing for US, this could be 2012 and 10. And so that with the lower standard deviation is going to have a lower risk. That's definitional as well. So coefficient of variation. Not likely you're going to end up having to calculate this, but it helps you compare two different potential investments where there's a difference in both risk and expected return. So you're going, okay, I've got different risks here. So the standard deviation is different and my expected return is different. So which one should I do? Which one gives me the best risk versus return opportunity? So you determine this coefficient of variation, which is risk over expected return. Which one do you think you would take? So let me go back. If you had two choices and you have a risk of 59% and an expected return of 10, and then you had a risk of 20% and an expected return of 4, now let's call it 5%, which one gives you the best return, risk return characteristics? So 59% 10. Yeah, the 4%, given the relatively significantly lower risk, gives you a lower coefficient of variation. So if you're risk averse, you're going to take the lowest coefficient of variation because you're going, okay, my chances of getting that expected return are greater. and by variation, my potential outcomes are much smaller in scope. So we talked about risk premium a little bit before, but risk aversion. So risk averse investors, what does risk averse mean to you? If you're highly risk averse, what does that mean?
The safest investment you can get.
You want the safest investment you can get. So aversion is like, I don't like this. So risk aversion is really going, hey, if I'm a highly risk averse investor, I want the lowest amount of risk, the lowest standard deviation, the lowest coefficient of variation that I can find. And so in order to get into a high risk security, that coefficient of variation that we just looked at, this needs to be really high. If this is 59%, this needs to be really high for me to go, yeah, that's going to be okay. I'll do it. It's high risk, but the expected return is really high. So it doesn't, if you're risk averse, it doesn't mean you won't take a risky investment. This means the expected return needs to be really high in order for you to go, yeah, I'll take that risk. And so that's where this coefficient of variation, when you're looking at multiple opportunities for risk and return, this brings it into a level set, and then you can compare two potential investments. Yes, sir.
Is there a way, like with that, you have to have a higher rate of return with a higher risk? Is there a way to judge? I know you're saying, your risk that you're going to make more or less. Is there a way to judge which one of those is more likely, and a way to kind of always get to know?
Yeah, so I'm going to go down a little rabbit hole, and I'll answer your question, but it's going to require me to go down a rabbit hole for a minute or two. So, for the purposes of the classroom, and generally out there in the real world, we assume a standard deviation. So we assume a normal curve. So your upside risk and downside risk are mirrored in probability. And so you go, okay, my likelihood is there's no skew in my curve, and so my likelihood is equal. So that's why you're able to go, well, it's the standard deviation, and because we assume a normal distribution of probability associated with return. The reality of it is normally you have a return curve that's skewed. And so the analysis, the answer to that is, in this class, we're not going to get into that. As a matter of fact, I would need to get back into that in like advanced investments class. I need to refresh myself because I haven't used it in 20 years on how to do that calculation. But yeah, normally what you would do is you would calculate out those probabilities come with the curve. And if it's not normal, if it's a non-normal distribution, you're likely to analyze only the left side, the downside risk, the left tail of that probability, and go, okay, what's my probability? If I'm expecting this, but I've got a skew on my curve, what's the probability under the curve associated with the left side of the tail? And then I'm going to analyze that, not assuming a normal distribution. So you've got to do transformations on your standard deviation to calculate it. And a lot of folks, when they look at and think about risk, all they care about is the downside risk, the left side of that curve. And so they're really analyzing downside probability, and they model that out and then calculate the probabilities against that, rather than assuming it's a normal distribution, and therefore you can utilize these as general rules of thumb.
So for these in this class,
It's going to be a normal distribution every time.
okay, so we're not thinking outside of
No.
outside rows. Okay.
No, I'm not going to, that would, I could think of,
I mean, just keep it outside, because like you say, risk, we think of risk as
downside.
downside.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, and so.
So keep them wide open and upside downside.
Yeah.
Look at that.
Yeah, upside, downside, and the reason we're able to do that is because our assumption of risk here is based on a normal distribution. As soon as you move away from that, you step right into the quagmire that you're talking about, and that's the high-end kind of finance and modeling stuff. And it's fascinating stuff, but not in this class. So we talked about risk aversion. So risk aversion doesn't let me phrase this differently. Does risk aversion mean you're not going to take on a risky investment?
No.
It means you're going to need to what?
Watch it very carefully, make sure it's in.
You guys need to be.
You need a higher rate, expected rate of return on that investment. The risk aversion just means, hey, I got to be compensated for this risk. Risk premium. So we've talked about risk premium in light of some of the bond analysis and company risk premiums a couple classes ago. It's the expected return that can be attributed to the investment's riskiness. So you got a risk-free component, and then you've got a risk premium. And the risk premium is investment specific generally. The difference between the expected rate of return on a risky asset and on a less risky asset is the risk premium. So if you have a risk-free asset, you get the risk-free rate. Anything above that is a risk premium. Something that is much more risky is going to have, in theory, a much larger risk premium. And you can calculate that, what that risk premium is, because you can calculate the risk-free rate. We're going to talk about beta and how to calculate the risk associated with the performance of the stock.
That's something they would always get. Is like guaranteed money, basically. No, it's guaranteed. That's kind of a better, just will get better outcome.
That's the risk premium. The risk premium is really your analysis of going, hey, this is what's required. Nothing's guaranteed. Okay, that's when you're talking risk, you're going, okay, I need a premium. And going back to that top question, I need a premium to take out the risk of this investment.
You're going to get more.
So my expected return needs to be high. That expected return, the higher part of that expected return is the risk premium. But that also means your standard deviation is going to be larger because it's a premium for taking on that additional volatility, and that means it may be lower, maybe higher. So essentially, this is that's shown graphically. So as risk increases along the x-axis, to the underlying investment opportunity. The higher the risk, the higher the necessary expected return. So a portfolio return is nothing more than, and that's R hat P, sub P, is nothing more than taking, if you have a portfolio that's got 3 different stocks in it, each one of those, you can calculate out what the expected return is. We're going to try to show how to do that with beta. And it's going, okay, the weighting of the stock is, again, we got a sum total of 100. Maybe it's 20%, 60%, 20%. The expected return is 10%, 10%, 5%. And you can mathematically figure out what that volatility is. So we're kind of wandering back through the wilderness here in business statistics. So the correlation coefficient measures the degree of relationship between two variables. So if I want to reduce risk in a portfolio, do I buy stocks that are correlated or not highly correlated? I want to reduce risk. Yeah, you're right. And pushing yourself closer to that risk-free, you can end up with multiple stocks average risk. Your risk premium is going to be up here, but because you've negatively correlated those stocks, you've reduced the volatility. So you're able to actually get close to, I don't think we talked about efficient frontier in this class, but you're actually able to get close to getting a pure return. When one stock goes up, the other one goes down, you're still going to get a positive return. You're going to start trying to lock in this risk-free component. And so a lot of times, if you have a well-diversified portfolio, volatility in the portfolio. So some people, for instance, they buy a bunch of stocks, then they'll buy 10% of their money they'll put in gold. Because gold has a strong negative correlation to the stock market. When inflation goes up, stocks tend to go down, but gold tends to go up. And so that's a negative correlation. Not calculating correlation coefficients. So to reduce risk, we're going to talk through this. You're going to combine stocks that aren't perfectly correlated. So if you want to reduce risk, which do you think is going to be a better combination? IBM and Apple, or IBM and Gulf States Energy? You're going to take something that's going to be certainly less positively correlated. So a utility and a tech company are likely to have a much lower correlation than two tech companies. However, it's all calculable. Sometimes you'd be surprised at how some stocks tend to move. So the other thing is the riskiness of a portfolio is reduced as the number of different stocks in a portfolio increases. Why do you think that is? Yeah, absolutely. You just nailed it. So, you got these company-specific risks. So, for instance, Columbia Bank, one of our local big banks here, the CEO, she was 64 years old. She passed away unexpectedly on Saturday or Sunday. It was tragic. She's been there for years. She did a phenomenal job building that bank from a very small community bank into a powerhouse, a regional powerhouse. That's a big event for Columbia Bank. Their stock price gets rocked. If that was the only stock in your portfolio, then you can get rocked. Because you got company-specific risk associated with that bank, for instance, or any other company. But if you had that, and then you had US Bank, and then you had Wells Fargo, and then you had Apple, and you had Amazon, and you had Microsoft, and you had each one of those at 10%, when one bad thing happens to one of those stocks, it doesn't impact everybody else. And so as a result, you're able to reduce the risk just by having the sheer number of potential company-specific events occurring. The impact of that on the specific weighted average portion of your portfolio is that much smaller. So you have the entire market basket of stocks, like an index fund, that you can buy index funds like the S&P 500 index fund through Vanguard or the Vanguard Total Stock Market Fund. Anything that happens to a company in there tends to not have much of a total impact on your portfolio. smaller positive correlation, the lower the risk. So again, it's the same, it's kind of beating itself up from here to here, over again, beating you over the head with the concept that the less correlated stocks are, the less risky that portfolio becomes. So we've moved now from looking at, okay, what's an individual stocks risk and what's an individual stocks return, to, okay, when we start combining these things, are we making ourselves riskier or less riskier to get the same return? And so the smaller the positive correlation, the lower the risk. So maybe you have some that are negatively correlated. So this one goes up, this one goes down. Maybe you have one where this one goes up, this one goes up less. That's a smaller positive correlation, still is reducing your risk. And the greater the negative correlation, the lower the risk. And that's what we just talked. So it goes up, goes down. If that's perfectly offset, you have removed the risk entirely. So here's your, graphically, portfolio risk is there on the y-axis. And this is a percentage. Remember, when we talk about risk, this is a standard deviation of performance. So you go, okay, with one stock, I might see a 30% standard deviation of performance, and my return is, kind of X. Unsystematic risk is essentially your company-specific risk. As you get out to 10 or 15, this drops dramatically. Your standard deviation of performance drops dramatically. It does not take, one of the things to kind of take away as a lesson is once you get out to 40 New York Stock Exchange stocks and you've got them in proportion to their market capitalization, you're basically almost fully diversified. You don't need all 2,500 New York Stock Exchange stocks to really get pretty close correlation to what the New York Stock Exchange is going to do and to remove most of your company-specific risk. So again, you get out here to about 40, 45, 50, and mathematically, that standard deviation associated with company-specific risk or unsystematic risk, which is company-specific, goes to near zero, and then your standard deviation essentially starts to settle in right about this 15% number. Systematic risk is a risk of like macro factors. So the whole market going up and down, the whole market being impacted by macroeconomic factors or other things outside. So it's not company specific, it's big picture economic, big picture global geopolitical issues. So systematic risk, you cannot diversify away. You can't diversify it. That's the big picture stuff that's hidden. So you can always diversify out your non-systematic risk. You can't get rid of systematic risk. That's there. That's inherent to the market. Does that make sense? Does this concept make sense? Again, one of the biggest things to remember is you don't need more than 40 to 50 stocks to fully diversify out your non-systematic risk mathematically, and you're basically down to just market risk. So we talked about we talked about specific risk, and that's your random outcomes, and we talked about that in light of Columbia Bank, things that happen specific to the firm. And it's eliminated through diversification, and that's diversifiable risk. Any questions on firm-specific risk? Okay, good. So market risk. It's a part of a securities risk that cannot be eliminated through diversification because it's associated with economic or market factors. It's non-diversifiable risk or systematic risk. Any question on this? Okay. It's an important concept to just remember that you can't diversify all the risk away. Relevant risk. I'm going to ask you why is, when these guys go, hey, this is relevant risk, market equals market risk, and it's a risk associated with a security that can't be diversified away, respects security's contribution to the total risk of a portfolio, and irrelevant risk is firm specific, why is irrelevant risk, why is firm-specific risk irrelevant in your analysis?
Because if you're diversified, it really is irrelevant. It doesn't make that much of a thing of that.
So we're going to talk about beta. Beta is calculated, and you can look it up. So you go to Yahoo Finance, and you type in any stock symbol, and they've got this big chart, and in there you'll see beta. And so beta is essentially measuring the correlation of the stock movement with the market as a whole. It's the correlation coefficient for that stock relative to a market move. So a beta of 1 is equal to the market. So a beta of 1 says the stock moves identically to the market. So if the market goes up 10%, the stock will go up 10%. That's a beta of 1. The entire market is well diversified because it includes all the investments. And so you're going, okay, how much really systematic risk or how much risk is associated with this stock as it pertains to the market. So if you got a beta of 1.5 and the market goes up 10%, that stock historically goes up 15%. If the market goes down by 10%, that stock historically goes down by 15%. So beta is really another measure of risk. It's another measure of kind of how volatile that stock is relative to the stock market. So a beta of 1 is a match to the market. A beta of 0.5 means if the stock market goes up 10%, the stock historically would go up 5%. Does that concept make sense? Yep, historical based. It's theoretically going to continue into the future, but it doesn't always. As a matter of fact, it never exactly does. And you've got the ability to look this stuff up. So beta, you can calculate it by putting in all of the historical stock prices for the company and all the historical market closing data, running a regression analysis, and beta is your correlation coefficient. Beta is your essentially your number that explains here's the change, and then alpha is the risk that kind of shows up that's not explained by the regression. So to get the beta, it's a regression analysis. We're not going to do regression analysis in this course. You did it in business statistics. So we covered this. Any questions on this? Beta of 0.5 of 1 and beta of 2, I use 1.5. So portfolio beta coefficients. Just like expected return, if I ask you to calculate a portfolio's beta coefficient, it's the weighted average of the betas for each given stock in the portfolio. The beta portfolio is the weight of stock 1 times the beta of stock 1 plus a weight of stock 2 times the beta of stock 2. Bam. Any questions on how to calculate that? Pretty straightforward, simple weighted average stuff. The risk premium for any given stock is calculable. We kind of talked about that. So the risk premium for any given stock is the risk of the market